It was mid-July of 1994, and the small Illinois suburb was alive with the sound of summer. Birds chirped lazily in the heat, sprinklers sprayed gardens in neat arcs, and the local community pool was packed with families trying to escape the sweltering sun. Children splashed and screamed in delight, their laughter echoing off the concrete and metal slides. Among them were Tommy, Sarah, and Marcus, three inseparable friends who had spent nearly every day together since the start of summer break. They were known for their mischievous antics, racing across the pool deck and daring each other to jump from the highest diving board. That day, like every other, began with innocent fun and carefree joy. As the morning wore on, a few locals began to notice something unusual. A dark-colored van lingered just outside the pool's parking lot, its engine idling quietly as if waiting for something. Some parents glanced nervously but assumed it belonged to a new lifeguard or a maintenance worker. Children, oblivious to the subtle tension, continued to dart between the shallow and deep ends, splashing water in all directions. Yet, there was a faint sense of unease in the air, a kind of static tension that no one could quite name. Even the lifeguards felt it, their eyes occasionally flicking toward the van as they tried to maintain order among the crowded swimmers. By early afternoon, the three friends had wandered away from the main pool area, chasing each other near the changing rooms and the fenced-off side of the pool grounds. Witnesses later recalled seeing them laughing and joking as usual, but something seemed different about their demeanor, an edge of distraction or urgency that had not been there before. A man in a nearby car lot recalled hearing muffled shouting, almost as if someone were calling the children, but when he looked, the area appeared empty. No one at the time thought to connect these fleeting observations to the tragedy that was about to unfold. Then, in a matter of minutes, the laughter stopped. Parents returned from the snack bar to find the area where Tommy, Sarah, and Marcus had been playing completely empty. Their towels and flip-flops were still scattered on the pool deck, but the kids themselves were nowhere to be seen. Panic rippled through the crowd like a wave. Lifeguards blew their whistles frantically, calling for everyone to remain calm, but the sense of dread was palpable. The community pool, once a place of joy and laughter, suddenly felt eerie and dangerous. By the time authorities arrived, the news had spread like wildfire through the town. Police cordoned off the pool, speaking urgently with parents and witnesses, trying to reconstruct the last moments before the disappearance. Every detail was scrutinized: the van, the unusual sounds, the children's last known movements. But no one could explain how three energetic, lively kids could vanish in broad daylight. It was as if the earth itself had swallowed them whole. That perfect summer day, once filled with sunlight and laughter, had turned into the beginning of a nightmare that would haunt the town for decades to come. The moment the parents realized Tommy, Sarah, and Marcus were gone, chaos erupted around the pool. Screams of fear replaced the laughter that had filled the air just moments before. Mothers clutched each other, fathers ran frantically along the pool deck, calling out the children's names, their voices hoarse with panic. Lifeguards dashed from one corner to another, scanning every inch of the pool and surrounding area, but it was as if the kids had simply disappeared into thin air. The sun beat down relentlessly, but no one noticed. Time had warped into a tense blur of fear, confusion, and desperation. Police arrived within minutes, sirens wailing, and immediately set up a perimeter around the pool and nearby streets. Officers questioned witnesses, trying to piece together the sequence of events in a matter of seconds that felt like hours. Every detail was scrutinized: who had last seen the kids, which direction they were running, and whether the suspicious van had moved. Nearby residents emerged from their homes, drawn by the commotion, hoping to help but instead adding to the chaos. The air was thick with tension as the community realized that this wasn't just a missing children case. It was a crisis that threatened the safety of every family in town. Search dogs were brought in, noses to the ground, ears perked for any trace of the children. Helicopters hovered overhead, their bright spotlights cutting through the late afternoon sun, scanning the surrounding woods and fields for movement. Boats were dispatched to comb nearby rivers and ponds, in case the kids had wandered or fallen in. Yet no footprints, no cries, no clues emerged. The town, which had been quiet and sleepy just hours before, now felt like a place under siege, every corner shadowed by fear and uncertainty. Volunteers joined the search, combing the nearby streets, alleyways, and wooded areas. Flashlights pierced the shadows of late summer evening, illuminating bushes and fences. But every minute that passed without finding the children intensified the collective panic. Rumors began to spread among the searching crowds. Someone had seen strange figures near the pool. A man had been acting suspiciously. A shadow had moved just beyond the tree line. Some claims were false, others unconfirmed. But every whisper fanned the flames of fear, making the night feel longer and darker than it truly was. By nightfall, the town was engulfed in an eerie silence, broken only by the distant wail of sirens and the frantic calls of volunteers searching for any trace of the missing children. Families gathered at the police station, holding photos of Tommy, Sarah, and Marcus, desperately hoping for any news. The media began to arrive, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions, but no answers came. It was as if the children had been swallowed by the earth itself, leaving behind only uncertainty and terror. That first day of searching set the tone for the weeks to come, an endless, heart-wrenching quest for answers in a mystery that seemed impossible to solve. As the search dragged on with no sign of Tommy, Sarah, or Marcus, the town began to fill with whispers and speculation. Parents huddled in their kitchens, replaying the day's events over and over, trying to spot something they had missed. Some believed it had been a tragic accident. Maybe the children had wandered into an abandoned drainage tunnel near the pool, or gotten lost in the woods that bordered the neighborhood. Others whispered about wild animals, imagining the worst in the shadowed trees. But none of these explanations seemed to fit perfectly. The children had always been careful, familiar with their surroundings, and none of the proposed scenarios could account for 3 kids vanishing in broad daylight. Then there were the darker theories, those that nobody wanted to voice aloud but that lingered in the corners of every worried mind. Some suspected an abduction, a predator who had been watching the pool for weeks, maybe even months. Others feared something even stranger, a secretive cult or a criminal network operating in the shadows, preying on unsuspecting children. Each new rumor sent shivers through the town, and every unusual person seen in the neighborhood during that summer was eyed with suspicion. A simple van parked outside the pool now seemed menacing, and every stranger walking near the area was regarded with mistrust. Local authorities struggled to balance investigation with calming the panicked community. Detectives revisited witness statements repeatedly, searching for contradictions or hidden clues. Some neighbors recalled seeing a man loitering near the pool hours before the children disappeared. Others swore they saw someone following the kids as they played. Each recollection added more pieces to a puzzle that refused to fit together. Even mundane details, a lost glove, a misplaced ball, were scrutinized for hidden significance. For weeks, the theories multiplied, and the town's imagination turned the familiar summer paradise into a place filled with lurking threats and unseen dangers. Media coverage amplified the tension, broadcasting sensational theories that only added fuel to the fire. Every local news segment speculated about possible motives, dangers, and suspects. Callers to talk shows suggested everything from kidnappers operating in the area to sinister underground rings, making the public question how safe their own neighborhoods really were. Some parents refused to let their children play outside, haunted by the idea that predators might be closer than they had ever imagined. Fear began to overshadow normal life, and the simple act of going to the pool or walking home from school felt increasingly perilous. Even decades later, these theories persisted, lingering in the collective memory of the town. Each new rumor, each unconfirmed sighting, renewed the anguish and anxiety surrounding the case. Families of the missing children clung to hope, hoping for answers, while the broader community wrestled with unease and paranoia. The absence of concrete evidence only made the speculation worse. It became clear that the mystery was more than just a missing persons case. It had transformed into a psychological shadow, haunting the town, twisting ordinary events into something sinister, and leaving everyone wondering who, or what, was really responsible for the disappearance of Tommy, Sarah, and Marcus? As the years turned into decades, the disappearance of Tommy, Sarah, and Marcus became one of Illinois' most haunting unsolved mysteries. Each summer, the community pool, once a place of laughter and light, sat mostly empty, its slides and diving boards slowly fading under the relentless sun. Lifeguards who were hired years later whispered the story to new recruits, cautioning them to never underestimate the shadows that lingered near the water. For the children's families, life had moved forward in some ways, yet they remained trapped in an unending loop of grief, revisiting every memory and every hope that maybe, just maybe, there would be a miracle. Local law enforcement maintained a low-level watch on the case, revisiting it sporadically as technology advanced, but leads remained scarce. Old evidence, once thought insignificant, was tucked away in filing cabinets, waiting for forensic methods that didn't yet exist. The detectives who had worked the original case grew older, some retired, some moved on to other investigations, yet the haunting memory of the vanished children never left them. Town residents, too, carried the weight of the mystery, and over time, the community's collective anxiety became a subtle but constant presence, a reminder that tragedy could strike anywhere, even in the most ordinary places. Each year, anniversaries of the disappearance revived the pain. Candlelight vigils were held, photographs displayed, and news outlets ran retrospective stories, keeping the case in the public eye. But with every passing year, hope seemed to dwindle. Rumors about the children's whereabouts, alive, kidnapped, or worse, circulated endlessly, but none were ever substantiated. For the families, each rumor was a double-edged sword, a glimmer of hope that quickly crumbled into despair. Even the most ordinary sounds, footsteps at night, a knock on the door, a car slowly driving by, could reignite the fear that the unknown force behind the disappearances was still out there. Meanwhile, the town itself began to change. New residents moved in, unaware of the chilling history, while longtime inhabitants carried the story like a scar etched into the landscape. The once bustling pool became a silent relic, its gates rusting, its water stagnant. Children grew up hearing hushed warnings from parents and neighbors, turning curiosity into caution. Schools would remind students to stay aware of strangers, a practice that was as much about protecting them as it was about acknowledging a past that refused to fade. The memory of the 3 missing children became embedded in the town's identity, a constant, unnerving reminder of how quickly life could shift from normal to nightmarish. Despite the years, investigators never truly closed the case. Files remained open, evidence carefully preserved, and the hope that modern science might someday illuminate the truth kept the case alive in both police stations and family homes. Generations grew up knowing the story, sharing whispered theories, and wondering what had really happened behind the gates of that sunlit pool. The disappearance had transformed from an immediate crisis into a long, lingering enigma, one that hung over the town like a shadow that refused to lift. Every unexplained noise, every fleeting shadow, and every new technology promised the potential for answers, keeping the memory of that tragic day alive in hearts and minds long after it first occurred. After 3 decades of silence, the FBI decided to reopen the 1994 Illinois pool disappearance in early 2024, armed with modern forensic technology that wasn't available in the 90s. Cold cases like this one had become a priority as new DNA methods and digital analysis tools allowed investigators to revisit old evidence with fresh eyes. The agency started by re-examining witness statements, cross-referencing them with surveillance footage from nearby businesses that had been archived but never fully analyzed. Small details that had been overlooked in 1994 suddenly took on new significance. A shadow in a video, a vehicle parked unusually, a fleeting glimpse of movement near the pool's fence. The breakthrough came when FBI analysts decided to revisit physical evidence collected from the pool's perimeter. Soil samples, once dismissed as irrelevant, were subjected to advanced DNA testing. The results were shocking. Traces of biological material linked to an unknown individual were discovered, confirming suspicions that the children had been abducted and that someone had been lurking in the pool area that day. Investigators realized that the van witnesses had seen decades ago might have been part of a coordinated effort, and that the disappearance was not random. The sense of horror that had haunted the town now had tangible proof behind it. The FBI didn't stop at the pool itself. They widened their search to include nearby abandoned properties, drainage tunnels, and secluded wooded areas. Modern forensic imaging and geospatial mapping allowed them to identify locations that could have served as hiding spots for the children. They also reanalyzed witness interviews using AI-enhanced pattern recognition, revealing inconsistencies and hidden clues that had gone unnoticed during the original investigation. Each discovery added layers to a story that had remained locked in darkness for 30 years, and the urgency of solving the case grew as the evidence began pointing to an organized and methodical abduction network. This new evidence sent shockwaves through the investigators, prompting immediate action. The FBI began tracing the DNA to potential suspects, using databases and familial DNA techniques that had been unavailable decades ago. Names previously thought unrelated to the case now became critical leads, and previously dismissed sightings and odd behaviors in the town started to align with the newly uncovered facts. For the first time since 1994, there was a real sense that justice could be within reach, and the possibility of uncovering the truth became tangible rather than hypothetical. As news of the breakthrough slowly leaked to the public, the town was electrified with a mixture of hope and fear. Families of missing children who had long given up began to wonder if answers would finally come. The media, which had treated the case as a historical mystery, shifted its focus to the FBI's modern investigation, fueling nationwide curiosity and suspense. The notion that 30 years of uncertainty could be unraveled by new science reminded everyone that time alone could not erase the truth, and that even the coldest of cold cases could suddenly ignite with revelations that no one could have predicted. The moment word spread that the FBI had uncovered a breakthrough in the 30-year-old disappearance, the entire town was shaken to its core. Longtime residents, who had grown accustomed to the uneasy silence of unanswered questions, suddenly found themselves confronting fears they thought had faded decades ago. Conversations in grocery stores, coffee shops, and local diners were dominated by whispers of the vanished children and the chilling revelations from the investigation. Parents hurried to check on their children, neighbors exchanged anxious glances, and the familiar streets felt strangely ominous, as if the shadows themselves had grown heavier with the passage of time. Social media and local news outlets erupted with speculation almost instantly. Videos and articles recounted every detail of the disappearance, mixing fact with years of rumor and folklore that had grown up around the case. People who had lived in the town at the time started coming forward, sharing memories that had been long buried. Strange vehicles parked near the pool, unfamiliar faces lingering near playgrounds, or odd noises heard during quiet summer nights. Each revelation, no matter how small, added fuel to the growing unease, painting a picture of a town that had been unknowingly watched for decades. Families of the missing children experienced a resurgence of intense emotion. Hope, grief, anger, and anxiety all collided at once. The thought that the FBI might finally uncover the truth filled them with cautious optimism, yet also reopened wounds that had never fully healed. Parents spoke to investigators, recalling minutiae they had forgotten over the years, desperate for their memories to contribute to the investigation. Even those who had tried to move on with their lives found themselves pulled back into a vortex of fear and suspense, as though the past had refused to let them go. The town's younger residents, many of whom had only heard the story in hushed whispers, were captivated by the unfolding drama. Teenagers and children alike discussed theories online, piecing together old newspaper clippings, witness statements, and archived footage. While the older generation remembered the terror of that day, the new generation approached it with a mixture of fascination and horror. The community became a hive of anxious speculation, each individual wondering if the events of 1994 were truly over or if the shadows of that summer still lingered among them. Even local law enforcement and city officials felt the weight of renewed attention. Police stations were flooded with calls, tips, and new leads, some helpful, some wild, but all demanding attention. Meetings were held to discuss security, community awareness, and the unfolding federal investigation. The town, which had long considered the case a distant memory, suddenly felt under a microscope, every street, every home, and every alley examined through the lens of fear and suspicion. The collective heartbeat of the community quickened with every update, every statement from the FBI, and every new piece of evidence, turning a decades-old tragedy into a present-day nightmare that refused to let the town rest. The FBI's investigation finally brought a truth so chilling that it sent tremors through the town and beyond. After meticulously analyzing decades-old evidence and connecting it with modern forensic breakthroughs, investigators concluded that Tommy, Sarah, and Marcus had been abducted by a sophisticated criminal network. This was no random act, no simple mistake. It was a calculated operation. The children had been carefully targeted, and the perpetrators had used the surrounding area to hide their tracks, taking advantage of the unsuspecting town and the era's limited surveillance technology. The revelation immediately reframed the entire narrative of that fateful summer day, turning what many thought was an inexplicable disappearance into a terrifyingly methodical crime. The details that emerged painted a horrifying picture. Investigators discovered that the network had used abandoned properties, secluded wooded areas, and hidden tunnels to transport and conceal the children. Each location was meticulously chosen to avoid detection, allowing the perpetrators to operate undisturbed for years. The children's laughter and innocence, once seen as emblematic of carefree summer days, now stood in stark contrast to the darkness that had surrounded them. Evidence suggested that the network had been active in multiple states, exploiting the limitations of the law enforcement systems of the 1990s and leaving families with only questions and heartbreak. The families of Tommy, Sarah, and Marcus were brought in to review the findings. Every new detail was a dagger to the heart, hints of the children's last movements, the possible locations they were held, and the shocking realization that the abductions had been part of a broader, organized operation. For the first time, they understood that the disappearance wasn't due to negligence or accident. It had been intentional, planned, and executed with a chilling precision. The mixture of grief and anger was almost unbearable, as decades of unanswered questions now converged into a terrifying reality. The revelations also sent shockwaves through the wider community. Residents who had long believed the past was behind them now faced the uncomfortable truth that such evil could exist so close to home. The notion that strangers could have been living among them, watching and waiting, transformed ordinary streets and familiar homes into places fraught with suspicion. Conversations turned from memories of the innocent past to fear of the unknown, as neighbors questioned whether they had unknowingly witnessed fragments of the truth all along. The town's collective sense of safety, already fragile from the initial disappearance, was shattered once more. Even as the FBI identified suspects and prepared for arrests, the psychological impact of the revelation lingered. The case became a stark reminder that justice can be delayed but not denied, and that time, while it can erode evidence and memories, can never completely erase the truth. Across the country, people followed the story with a mixture of fascination and horror, realizing how carefully some crimes can remain hidden for decades. The town of Illinois, forever marked by the summer of 1994, faced a new reality. The nightmare had always been real, and only now was the terrifying truth finally coming to light. As the sun set over the quiet Illinois suburb, the echoes of that long-ago summer still lingered in the town's empty streets and abandoned playgrounds. For 30 years, Tommy, Sarah, and Marcus had vanished into a world of darkness and uncertainty. But now, at last, the truth had begun to emerge. The FBI's breakthrough exposed a nightmare that had hidden in plain sight, reminding everyone that evil can operate in silence, unnoticed, even in the most ordinary places. Families who had waited decades for answers finally knew the horrifying reality, yet the pain of loss remained, unhealed and raw. The town, once filled with laughter and summer memories, had been forever changed. Streets, homes, and the pool itself carried the weight of the past, a haunting reminder that innocence can be stolen in a single, fleeting moment. And while justice had finally begun to reach out for those responsible, the story of the missing children would never truly end. It would live on in whispers, memories, and the shadows of every sunlit summer day. This chilling case serves as a warning. The world can be far darker than it appears, and sometimes, the answers we've been waiting for take decades to surface. What really happened in that Illinois pool in 1994? Who else might still be hiding in the shadows? And what other secrets lie just beneath the surface, waiting for the light of truth to expose them? The story of Tommy, Sarah, and Marcus reminds us all that mysteries never truly die. They only wait for someone brave enough, patient enough, or determined enough to uncover the truth, no matter how terrifying it may be.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.